In this episode of the Project Management Podcast, we look at how mindfulness will not only help you to be more in the moment, but deliver better projects as a result. Hello and welcome to the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com. This is episode 400 and I'm Cornelius Fichtner. Thank you for joining us. If you listen to the podcast regularly, then you will probably already have noticed that this didn't sound like it used to. And you would be right. We have decided to make a few minor adjustments here and there in the show structure. But of course, we are going to continue to bring you expert guests and quality interviews. The topic today is mindfulness, and our guest is Margaret Meloni. Becoming better at project management, and by extension also becoming a better project manager, does not necessarily mean learning about and then also implementing the latest tools, techniques, or methodologies. Instead, it can simply mean that you start paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment and non-judgmentally. That's mindfulness. Mindfulness as a business practice has seen a significant increase in press coverage lately. It originally started out as a means for improving yourself and your interactions with others, but you will find that many leadership articles in the large business journals will make reference to it. And so, we are very glad to welcome Margaret Meloni to look at mindfulness for project managers with us today. We will give you a definition, discuss the benefits, but most importantly, we will go through a number of familiar project management situations to see how mindfulness will help us improve. Hello, Margaret, and welcome to the 400th podcast episode.
Wow, Cornelius, thank you.
Mindfulness. What exactly is mindfulness? How do you define it?
Simply, and yet it's not simple. It's pure awareness. When you first become aware of something, there's this moment of pure awareness before you start hanging all your thoughts and stuff on it, before you start conceptualizing it and framing it. You know, for example, when an idea pops into your head and it feels like it came from nowhere, the moment before you start putting all kinds of mental parameters around it, that's mindfulness. Like when out of nowhere you realize why you're part of the budget presentation, that's a form of mindfulness. It's present time awareness. It's non-judgmental observation. It's non-egoistic. So if you're aware of something and not putting in the context about, how it's about you and your world, and this is an odd one for those of us as project managers, it's actually goalless. But it can actually help us meet our goals, and we'll talk about that later. It's awareness of change. And all of the above is associated with some form of meditation or practice of quieting the mind. See, simple, but not simple.
What can our project management listeners expect to learn from this discussion here today?
Well, so a better understanding of what mindfulness is, why mindfulness can make you a better project manager, why mindfulness is more than just a buzzword, how to practice mindfulness on your own, and also with your team.
And what are some of the specific benefits of being more mindful?
Mindfulness actually reminds us of what we're supposed to be doing. When we have these moments of pure awareness, they help to refocus us. For example, if you became aware that a communication you just sent did not have the intended result, your next thought is about focusing on what to do about it. So it helps with focus and concentration. It's not concentration, by the way, but it leads to concentration. So that flash of where to place your attention, which then helps you develop your concentration skills. Flashes of pure awareness drive creativity and problem solving. It helps you self-regulate. And so we've had conversations in the past about emotional intelligence. So self-control or self-regulation is a key part of emotional intelligence. It reduces stress and anxiety. It reduces bias because remember we said it's non-judgmental observation. So when you can foster this non-judgmental observation, this attitude carries into your everyday thoughts and interactions. And when you have more non-judgmental moments and less bias, you have stronger professional and personal relationships. And so while we're discussing soft skills, though, fit to the bottom line. When you have employees who are healthier, form stronger teams, and have reduced anxiety, you have a competitive advantage.
In preparation of this interview, I went ahead and I purchased a magazine. It's called the Mindfulness magazine.
Mm-hmm.
What I noticed is the fact that the articles in the magazine, they're all aimed at you and me as individuals, helping us with mindfulness in our private life. But then I saw that all the advertising in the magazine was for mindfulness training aimed at businesses. So bring us in as consultants, will help you to become more mindful in your business. How big is mindfulness in corporations for business use?
It's big and growing. A lot of corporations are eager to find the next tool or technique to help them advance. And so I'll say that's the buzzword aspect of all this. Remember, there was a time when authenticity was a buzzword. Authenticity is important, but sometimes it was overused. Accountability was an overused buzzword. It's important to be accountable, so there's some aspect of mindfulness where it's becoming this popular buzzword, the next big thing. But there's some value here that we want to hang on to. But I just want to give you some backgrounds here. So like in 2015, Harvard Business Review, in one of their articles, said this: mindfulness should no longer be considered a nice to have for executives. It's a must have, a way to keep our brains healthy, to support self-regulation, effective decision-making capabilities, and to protect ourselves from toxic stress. When Harvard Business Review says something is a nice to have, that's certainly a call to arms. If I would say about mindfulness is peaceful, but that's the saying that came to mind. And to come to this year, 2017, in Inc., mindfulness-based businesses are listed as one of the best industries for starting a business. So you can expect more. And let's get to some of the meat here. Right now, it's estimated to be a $1.1 billion industry in the United States.
Wow. I'm going to start the mindfulness podcast pretty soon if you continue to market it to me like this.
Yep. And, so there's a lot of good there. And then like anything else where something becomes popular and everyone charges over to it, we want to be mindful in our selections of our sources to help us with this, right? Which we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yeah. So let's start bringing this all together for project managers. We project managers, we often lead projects that innovate our business. Maybe we have to define new processes for our organization or develop new products. Is there a link between mindfulness and the innovation type work that we do?
Absolutely. Now, mindfulness helps to quiet the mind. It helps us when we talk about how mindfulness leads to focus and concentration. What we mean is because it reduces all that chatter that's going on, oh my gosh, I have to go to the grocery store. Oh, by the way, did I close that door? And should I close the windows before I go out? And oh, this person needs me to send this budget report. All of that. Mindfulness helps to quiet that chatter. And when our chatter is quiet, or let's say it another way, when we have silenced the cognitive control network, we are more capable of divergent thinking. Now, why do we care about divergent thinking? So those of you who have studied problem solving, team problem solving, or even individual problem solving, but I'm thinking of the team problem solving model, we want to lead our team members through divergent thinking. That's that, pardon the cliche, thinking outside of the box, coming up with all kinds of great creative ideas. And so that type of thinking, again, it requires that silencing of that cognitive control network, that constant chatter that goes on in our minds, and also that voice that judges ideas, so that unfortunately, sometimes in a brainstorming or divergent thinking session, somebody will think of something and then they'll stop themselves, they'll judge themselves, and they won't let the idea come out. And we want those ideas to come out. So we want to silence that chatter so that we can allow those brainstorming ideas to come out.
Mindfulness is a soft skills, but managing the budget, schedule, scope, and risk on our projects, they're more leaning towards the harder side of the things that we have to do. Can we use mindfulness in those areas? And how do we do that?
Sure. Well, again, mindfulness is not concentration, but it leads to concentration. When I can spend some time daily just quieting my mind and allowing myself to have some of these flashes of pure awareness, later I am able to have more concentration. and letting me know where I should place my attention. So a question for you and everyone listening. Have you ever messed up a schedule or budget because you were so overwhelmed by everything else?
Never.
Okay, well, you're perfect. But no, I have. You can't see me because we're on a podcast, but I'm over here raising my hands. I have. Have you ever made a mistake due to stress?
Yeah.
Have you ever had to work with a team to come up with a creative response to a risk?
Almost daily, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And remember, mindfulness helps us to be able to have more of that creative thinking. Have you ever realized that your presentation about the facts of the project was falling flat and that you were losing your audience and your support?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not you, but certainly, oh gosh, when I was new, some of my beginning presentations, so many people I should call and apologize to.
Yeah.
As you have more mindful moments and as your cognition improves, your ability to handle distractions improves. And distractions take away from our ability to do a good job with the schedule and the budget and the risks. Because if I'm a distracted thinker, then no matter what the task at hand is, I can't do as good a job. So when we can, handle distraction, we can be good at the hard skills.
Yeah, and I agree. Sometimes you're just in the zone, and you're just here, and everything seems to click, and you're just moving forward so much better. Is the zone part of mindfulness?
The zone is a benefit of mindfulness because you are strengthening your brain. So mindfulness, you can think of it as a kind of brain training, and when we give ourselves the quiet moment at some point during the day, it allows our brain to settle in a good way and to have more focus and calmness during the day. And it helps us become less distracted and, less attention deficit disorder.
Mm-hmm. I hear a lot of creativity that's happening through mindfulness, but project management relies a lot on checklists, predefined processes, templates that you need to fill in, methodologies that you must follow. It's just, blindly, you have to do this, period. And if your projects are in a regulated environment, all this becomes a must. Right. Mm-hmm. So what about this difference there between, mindfulness being the creative part versus, you have to do it this way. You can't veer off. How do we bring these together?
That's fair. And, and it's true. There are some things that need to be handled in a standardized way. And there's nothing about our conversation today that changes that, nor should it. It's about how you bring yourself to that repetitive task, if I can say it that way. A story I'd like to share was a study that was done with some symphony musicians. And even though when some of us go to the symphony, it's amazing and beautiful, sometimes I guess they're bored. And they're bored because they're playing the same thing over and over again. So where, the 1812 overture might be, the highlight of your evening, they're playing it for the gazillionth time, maybe not the highlight of their evening. But it's important, and it's important for them to perform it well as a group. And so an experiment was done. And, some of them were told to just kind of play it in a repetitive, mindless way. I don't know that the word mindless was used, but, play your music the way you're supposed to play your music. Now, others were told to individualize it, play it the way they wanted to play it. And they had that recorded, and they played the both recordings for people who knew nothing about the study, didn't know why they were listening to two different versions of, I'll say the 1812 overture. I don't remember what piece they used. And the people who listened overwhelmingly chose the piece that was being played, not like rote work, but in a mindful fashion. So in some way, they were able to pick up on the fact that that was a better presentation, a better performance. So there's a way in which we can let people do their own thing, but still be following the checklist. It's about how you bring yourself to your checklist. So if I go through the checklist and go, oh, okay, now I have to enter this into my schedule because that's how we do schedules here. Or I'm mindfully applying the checklist and I'm thinking, okay, this is how we apply schedules here. How does this pertinent to my project, and how is applying this checklist to the schedule for my project going to make sure we have a well-constructed, standardized schedule? Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, it does. It explains it quite well. But of course, it's a symphony orchestra, and very few of us usually have projects with symphony orchestra. So let's take a look at a few scenarios that every project manager encounters on his or her projects, and how you suggest that we employ mindfulness. Let's begin with communication. Because according to Kerzner, we project managers communicate now 90%. In my case, it's more like 106%. I talk so much. How can mindfulness help me with communications on project management?
I promise I'm going to answer that, but can I go back a second? You were saying yes, but those are symphony musicians. I don't know why I keep wanting to say museums. Symphony musicians, and we don't work with that. We don't work with them. True, but I guess I just want to, if I may, I want to suggest to you that a team is like a group of musicians. Everyone has their part to play, and when they play it, you know the difference. So I would contend that in a way we do kind of have symphony musicians.
Right.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, I use the symphony orchestra as a means of explaining in my PMP exam prep training what integration means.
See?
Integrating all the various pieces, all the various instruments into one overture, into one symphony, and you as the project manager are standing there and you are the director of this thing. So yes, I get that. I get that.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So communication.
And
how do we use mindfulness in that?
Okay, so in communication. All right. So a couple of the benefits: less judgment and bias, non-egoistic awareness. Items help us come up with better communications, because if I cannot communicate to you with bias, oh, I know if I say it this way to Cornelius, he's going to think this because that's how he always is. If I can let go of that, and if I can also stop communicating from me, this is what I want to say, and this is what I want you to know, and me, I could really have much better, clearer communications, because look at a couple of the filters that I'm taking away from, in a sense, these are phrased differently, but we could probably tie them to some of those distractors that we see in the communications model. And I will also say, since mindfulness does help us to reduce our stress, I do such a better job when I am not freaking out. So if I call you up and ask you to do something and I am freaking out, Cornelius, I need you to do that task now, okay? Versus, Cornelius, we've had a request to complete one of these tasks earlier, and the specific task I'm talking about is task A. And the reason for this is because it's going to help our customers prepare their marketing materials earlier. You see where I'm going?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah. Scenario 2. How does mindfulness help me with managing my stakeholders?
So, let's think about mindfulness and our stakeholders. Mindfulness helps you understand what you should be doing. So that flash of pure awareness, which can be translated into concentration, that can be about strategy. You bring better strategic thinking to your project, and that translates into all of the aspects of how you manage your project and your stakeholders, plus the other items, and I just didn't want to repeat them again, but the other items we've been talking about, like the improved communications and, bringing more awareness to our work.
And then finally, here is a situation that everyone knows, and that's, I just don't have enough time in the day to get everything done that I need to get done on this project. Can mindfulness come to the rescue here?
Yes. Some of you are going to fight me on this one. There's a point in the day where you become less productive. There's another point in the day where you begin to make mistakes that take away from the work you've already accomplished. It's different for all of us. So for me, around 10 hours, I need to stop if I push forward after that, I'm going to start messing things up. You can help avoid this by being aware of when it's time to stop. Every time I push myself beyond the time when I should stop, I'm sorry. Taking short mindfulness breaks, walking away, turning your chair away from your computer. When you practice mindfulness in this way, the time you do spend is more productive. When you take a necessary break, you will be more productive when you return. So you might be able to stretch your time, but you also might not need to stretch your time because, and I know some people aren't going to see this because they just feel it's really counterintuitive, but if you take a 10-minute break, that could mean when you come back, instead of taking 45 minutes to accomplish something, you take 25 minutes to accomplish that same thing because you are more clear and focused. But I know some people, you're going to insist on just tying yourselves to your chairs until you accomplish every single thing. And you have to do what you have to do. I just wish you would consider another way.
No, I'm right behind you there. We currently have a humongous project here in our company that involves pretty much everybody. And about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I sent out an email with a link to a study to everybody in which they talk about the importance of taking breaks. And don't quote me on this. I don't recall the exact number, but it was really astonishing to see that taking short breaks on a regular basis and working actually less and not more, leaving at 5 o'clock instead of leaving at 8 o'clock, will increase your productivity overall because you're taking time off, you're clearer, you're coming back refreshed.
You're stronger, you're better when you come back. But it just is going against everything we're being taught, work more hours.
Yeah. Since we're talking about time, a little bit rhetorical maybe at this point, but mindfulness, it seems to take a lot of time in and of itself. Is it really worth it?
It's really worth it, and it's also really not a lot of time. You can start with 10 minutes of quiet time a day, depending on how, everyone has a different schedule, and depending on how many hours you sleep every night, that 10 minutes is less than 1% of your waking time.
Is it something that I do every day? Is it something that I plan, or is it something I do whenever it just pops up?
It's best to start by planning for it because otherwise your day will go on and you'll go, oh, I meant to be mindful today and I didn't do it. Bam, tomorrow. Oh, I meant to meditate for 10 minutes. I didn't do it. And, most of us have smartphones or similar with timers. What the important thing to do is to be realistic and know that some days this will work better than others. This is training. Some days you train better than others, but the more you train, the better you get. And the more you train, which I know sounds weird because the more you make something part of your life, it becomes a habit. So yes, you do want to do it every day. And I also understand that some people have an allergy, if you will, to the thought of meditation. So yes, a lot of what you're going to see about mindfulness is going to recommend meditation and 10 minutes of meditation. But this doesn't have to be, sitting in the lotus position on top of your desk, because some people, again, have an allergy to that. And I get that. But here is what mindfulness meditation can be. Close your door and eat your lunch. But only eat your lunch. Try to only think about the fact that you are eating your lunch. And just be chewing. And don't be reading or doing emails or talking on the phone. There's also something called walking meditation, which is very good for people who want to combine this with a little bit of moving around. It's really just putting one foot in front of the other. And as you're walking, you try to just breathe or to just think, I'm putting my left foot down. Now I'm putting my right foot down. Obviously, you pick them up too or you're going to fall over, but you know what I mean. If you play a musical instrument, it's only playing that instrument, only thinking about tapping those keys on that piano. So there's so many different ways you can do this.
In that case, I have another one for you, and that's shopping. That may seem like an odd thing to do, but just yesterday I was completely overwhelmed here at work, and I decided I just need to get out of here. I need to do something different. I need to refocus my mind. I need to shift my attention. And I decided to go down to the supermarket and do a quick shopping trip. It only takes me about 5 minutes to drive there. So I drove to this market. I did a little bit of shopping. I came back again. And of course, during that time, I'm focused on driving. Once I'm there, I'm focused on shopping. I completely forgot about work, and I focused on the task at hand. I came back, and in fact, yesterday was one of the better days this week in terms of getting things done, because after I did that, I was refreshed, and I really started and continued my day doing things much, much better than if I had just, hunkered down and gone, no, I have to continue here. I have to do this. Yeah.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And, we're having a very, I'll say, secular professional conversation, which is perfect. I'm going to just insert something into it in a minute because you reminded me of it, which is that in the Zen tradition, in Zen Buddhism, some of their approach to meditation is performing daily tasks. But I think everybody that's listening maybe know, we haven't officially called it out or said it, but we may as well, that a lot of the ideas of mindfulness meditation come from Buddhism. But in business, we're using them in a very secular way. We're not using them in any kind of religious way. But what you said to me reminded me very much of in the Zen tradition. There is, when you're doing dishes, you're doing dish meditation. When you're sweeping, you're sweeping. Yeah. And that's what you did when you were shopping.
Let's talk a little bit about corporations. I know that Google, the company, and Twitter, the company, they are promoting mindfulness to their employees. Even though not all companies are this forward thinking, everybody can still do their own, can still do mindfulness in their own realm of influence. So how can we project managers integrate mindfulness into our projects and particularly instill it in our project team members?
Well, one of my favorite techniques, which I did not come up with on my own, to be fair, one of my favorite techniques is the mindful minute, where you start your meetings, where you actually take a minute of silence and just ask everyone to sit quietly and just, if they can, just try to focus on their breathing or something else. And that really helps them shake off whatever they just came from. Because, sometimes we run right into meetings and we're not really thinking yet. And it helps them shake off whatever that has been rattling around in their mind and brings them to the present moment and the meeting and the issue at hand. Now, what I would add to that, because it would be beneficial to your attendees, is if you can close your meeting with a mindful minute. So that before everyone goes rushing off, because, at the end of that meeting is okay, here's what I have to go do next, to also close with a mindful minute. And if you have access, you can set up quiet spaces. So Google and Twitter both, I believe, have set up specific areas where people could go to have quiet time. That may or may not be an option to some of you, but it might be, if you have a conference room that isn't widely used, that you can make it into a quiet room. In fact, some companies have had quiet rooms in the past. I think that they were popular and then went away, but maybe that's something to bring back. And you can also encourage people to get together for short meditation periods or even for just quiet walks together. And speaking of walking, walk around and encourage people to just stop what they're doing for a minute. Now, you're going to want to let people know ahead of time that you might do this because at first it's going to freak them out. But you can make it a game where you walk out to your team, this assumes co-location, and call out freeze. So you walk out onto the floor where your team is and say freeze, and then set your timer for 2 minutes, and then have them unfreeze. And your goal, of course, during that moment is not like they're just freezing in position, like that game we used to play when we were kids, but that what they do is they freeze and they stop their work and they try to just in that moment just clear their thoughts and just breathe. And, so we can make it a game. And what that does, it gets people in the habit of taking those quick mindfulness breaks. The most important thing to remember, though, is that if you want to help your team, you have to start with yourself first.
Yeah, as always. And finally, where do we even start? I must admit that before I discussed this topic with you and got interested in and prepared our discussion here, Mindfulness in the workplace, that was a new concept for me and probably to many of our listeners out there as well. So how do we project managers get going? How do we get training and how do we start practicing mindfulness, starting with ourselves here?
Okay. Well, in terms of the starting with yourselves, I will just quickly say something I said earlier, which is that you can really start with 10 minutes a day. You can really add 10 minutes to your day, to your schedule, where you sit and you place the timer and you sit and you have quiet time. There's a lot of help you can get looking things like that up online. So I recommend some research. And depending on what you're after, you can start with some good web searches. There's plenty of good articles out there. And definitely there's articles in reputable publications for anyone who's nervous about this topic. Review, Forbes, Inc., Fast Company. If you want an official training program, treat this like any other program where you would spend your time and money. Be clear about what you want and vet your vendor carefully. Look at their qualifications. Check their references, especially since we discussed earlier, that this is a growing industry. And so we want to make sure that if we trust somebody with this, mindfulness, you're trusting them with your mind, that they are reputable. There are a few books that you might consider. The first one I wanted to share with all of you is called The Mindfulness Edge: How to Rewire Your Brain for Leadership and Personal Excellence with to your schedule. And that's by Matt Tenney and Tim Gard. There's 10-Minute Mindfulness, 71 Habits for Living in the Present Moment by S.J. Scott and Barry Davenport. So those are just some activities that you can do. I want to share with you, since we spoke earlier about Google and Twitter, a book written by the man from Google, Chade Meng Tan, and his book is called Search Inside Yourself: The Unexpected Path to Achieving Success, Happiness, and World Peace. And he does also talk about mindfulness and also compassion at work, which some of you who know me know that's another topic that I love. And so those are some 3 books. If you're that person who you like to just wrap your head around something first before you bring it to your team, take a look at those, read some articles, and then take a look for your next steps. Thanks.
Wonderful. Margaret, thank you so much for your time today and stopping by for our 400th episode.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting to be on a big round number like that. I couldn't be happier to be here, and thank you for allowing me to come in and to talk about this specific topic.
Margaret Meloni helps project managers learn the skills and knowledge to navigate the art and science of project management. She is a business owner, coach, experienced project manager, and IT executive. And she teaches for the University of Irvine and Los Angeles. Find out more at margaretmeloni.com. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Please visit pm-podcast.com for show notes, links, transcripts, and PDU information. Our email address is info@pm-podcast.com. And finally, we have this. Tell a man that there are 300 billion stars in the universe, and he'll believe you. Tell him that there is no way that you can finish the project on schedule, and he'll cut your budget. Until next time.